Kia ora koutou, everybody, and apologies for that slight slip up at the beginning. Welcome to Agility Matters, where we look at adaptive organizations responding to customer needs and being responsive in how they do it. Just like tonight. We set up a stream, we accidentally went live, we pulled that back quite quickly, and then we pivoted to a new link. And hopefully you guys can all get that new link quite quickly. There are 44 people on the call, so I'm quite happy that most of you have got that new link. I'm got two fun things today. All right, we've got a new co-host. Welcome, Colart Miles. For those of you who don't know Colart, you'll get to know him tonight. He's a great guy from Surge.coach. It's all a bit of fun. And we're going to be introducing Dawie Olivier, right? Dawie Olivier has been around for a long time, transforming organizations for the benefit of customer value. We're going to hear about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael. And hello, Colart. Nice to see you again.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we like to kick off these shows with one simple question. Why does agility matter?
It's actually interesting. I was having this debate this morning. I had a fantastic session with an executive team from one of the great New Zealand organizations who want to adopt agile practices, flow-based practices, and the like. And I got a similar question. And the fact is, agility doesn't actually matter. What matters is whether or not we're building world-class organizations that have happy people who are bringing their whole selves to a cause that is in line with the intent of the organization. Agility just happens to be one of the dimensions of creating such an organization. Excuse me. And so agility in and of itself is a characteristic and not a thing. It's a dimension. Also, when we say the word agility, we very quickly get into methods and dogmas. And dogmas are the enemy of our learning. So to me, agile and agility and big A's and small A's. These are all just toolboxes, just as lean is and was and has been over history. Anyway, that's a long answer to a short question.
Love it. Well, it's better than just saying yes or no. And so tell us about you. Who are you? Where are you from? How did you end up here? What's been your, experience to date that has awoken you in that? Why are you a transformational leader is what I'm trying to get
to. Okay. That is quite a long story, actually. I started off my career as an officer in the Navy, in the military, spent nearly 10 years there. And it's a great learning school for the reasons why people will move in the direction that you want them to, or won't move in the direction that you want them to. And it teaches you quite quickly that that power, especially positional power, is an illusion. Because when you live in a world where the decisions you make and the instructions you give can literally kill people, they do tend to examine what you've asked them to do a lot more carefully than what you would see in the corporate world. So it's a great school of learning for leaders, and most importantly, it's learning school for servant leaders, because in an environment like that, your entire job is focused on how to create an environment within which your sailors, your soldiers can do the job with as little risk to them, and in this case, meaning real risk. And then, of course, with as much esprit de corps as possible. So those are learnings that have stood me in great stead over my career in multiple organizations. And from the Navy, I ended up I used to teach software development. So I was one of the very first of the MCSDs for .NET back in the day. It was a great thing, C# and all that lovely stuff. And one of the things that struck me in working with these developers who were learning this new framework and these new skills was just how bloody miserable they were all the time. And if you see enough of that, some of those links, those synapses start firing, and you start making the connection between the lessons learned in working with people in dangerous situations, and then in working situations, and what those behaviors and leadership traits are that create the environments within which they can be their best. And that just snowballed from there onwards, as every iteration of my career since then has had some of those dimensions in it, in ever more maturing and ever better articulated ways. So that's how we get to where we are here, where it's my passion to be able to not only create those organizations or lead those organizations, but also to help others by the sharing of the stories and the traits and the behaviors for leaders that make these organizations possible.
I love it. And I said to you on LinkedIn actually today, I'm loving how many people from the Navy are joining this fun way of working, right? Because you got obviously Colart, ex-Navy. We had Jack here from the UK, who was ex-Navy as well, and I've got a couple of people I work with in Wellington who are ex-Navy. So it's not really many ex-Army around, which is quite interesting. Maybe that's
That's not something I'm going to comment on.
No. And for those who haven't worked in defense, there's a bit of an in-joke there, which is quite fun. So I want to say straight away, kia ora Edwin, kia ora Stefan, who's from Germany. So welcome Stefan from Germany. Kia ora Chris, kia ora Shane Hasty. We love you, Shane. AWS, Flutz, which is Tim, Chris Hank, Shane again. And yeah, questions are coming in strong. So guys, make sure you A, hit the subscribe button, the like button, and B, put your comments in the comment feed. And what Colart's going to do is basically go through those, knock out some, and we're going to have a continuous conversation with all of us. So it's not just us blaring questions at Dawie. It's going to be you guys asking the hard and fast questions of, does this even matter? So let's crack into one of the agendas. Why transform an organization at all?
Yeah, and it's probably the leading question, the first question that I do go into any of these sessions with is why are you doing this? And probably one of the most heartfelt views or opinions on why an organization was doing this was because of the long way that they had strayed, if you will, from the initial intent and the initial spirit of the organization when it was created. And the frustration that came from seeing how progressively layers of governance, of bureaucracy, of distance between customer and solution had crept in and taken away the original pioneering spirit of innovation and of creativity with which these organizations were created. So oftentimes it's the need to recapture those things that made an organization successful in the first place, and that you can really only do by getting back to, getting out of the way of those people that have those traits and that have that creativity, and not letting them trip over your organization all the time. There is another reason why this is often done. It is unfortunate that the concept of transformation, and specifically the use of agile tools, is often used for much more cold corporate reasons, such as reducing cost and reducing time and all that kind of stuff. So, I always urge us to be quite careful to also look after the spirit of the organization and the culture of the organization at the same time as we are looking after its business metrics, its culture metrics.
Yeah. It's actually one of the reasons why, and Carla, me and you talk about this quite often, why I get kind of grumpy. I see proposals from big organizations who state pretty much 20-page document, and at the end it says, we'll save you 30% FTE by going agile. And that's why I like agility, because for me, agility is about organizational design, adaptability, flexibility, responsiveness. It's not about actually removing FTE. It's about redistributing those FTE on something more valuable, so they're happier, customers happier, and leaders become great.
Yeah.
Is that what you're finding? Not only you're seeing that directly where you've been, but are you struggling with other leaders who go, "Oh, I can save 30% FTE here"? Or are you seeing more leaders going, yay, we can redistribute people to more valuable things?
We see both of those things, in pretty much equal measure. And understanding that as executives in large organizations, we've been schooled to take the shortest and most direct path to the commercial outcome that we need to create for the organization. And that often means that you read a proposal, a deck, or a piece of learning from the summary up front, and then from the executive up front and the summary at the back, right? And you go straight for the findings. And the findings say at the beginning, do agile because it's great, and at the end it says it'll take out 30% of your cost. Hey, that's easy. Make the link. Forgetting that it's a winding path of learning and of behavior and culture, etc., along the way. So it's not surprising. We've all been schooled that way. Anybody who did an MBA 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was all about finding the shortcuts. And I don't say shortcuts in a bad way. I mean the direct path to the result.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Because that's actually quite cool. Good point. Because Colart, you did your MBA 6 years ago.
That's right. Yep.
I finished mine last year, and I went into that MBA, and I know some of the professors actually watch this stream, so I'll be a little bit kind. But I loved my Massey MBA. It was brilliant. But I went in there thinking that I'll be told to cut staff. This is one way of doing things. And it wasn't. It was all about, good leadership practices, not management practices. It's all about reorganizing around value. People are amazing. Get out their way. So I was shocked. But you're right. I heard from the professors 10 years ago, all they were telling people to do was how to sack as many people as possible.
Well, so if you think about, that's not that surprising, right? Is that teaching is generational, and organizational leadership is generational too. And organizational leadership actually lags the teaching by 5 to 10 years. So that's going to be the minimum amount of time that it's going to take you having a fresh MBA from last year to be the CEO of an organization, right? It's going to take 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 15 years. And that's how long it'll take for you to have the umbrella of influence with which you can widely apply this philosophy and your beliefs into an organization at scale. Remembering that most of the leaders that we see as the senior leaders of organizations today, they did their MBAs 25 years ago, and go and have a look at the teachings then, right? It was at the height of GE, of Jack Welch, and these were all the behaviors of economies of scale and of spans and layers and all that kind of stuff. So that's not surprising.
No, that's a very good point. The lag factor is actually huge, isn't it?
It is huge.
There's something to be said for where you focus, and I think humans are quite weird, right? That you tend to get more of what you focus on, and I think that happens at an organizational level. So if you focus on sort of waste, there's an interesting effect. But I think the opposite is if you focus on value, then you get more of what you want, and you tend to get less of what you don't want. Folks, we've actually got a couple of questions that have come through. Are we okay to chuck a few in and see where it takes us? Awesome. Okay, so first
before
one,
you do, tell us who else you've got on the line. Let's shout out some folks.
Yeah, we've got heaps of people come through. Our friend Ro Gorell are you still in Perth, Ro? Hopefully. And we've got Belinda Simcox.
Hey,
kia ora.
Hey, Sim. Yeah, nice to speak to you again.
There you go. And Ruth Nelson and Flutz is still there. We've got heaps of people that joined. Nevedita, Nitu, kia ora. Someone from Isolation Island. Hey.
Wow.
They got an echo. Hope you solved that. And of course, our friend Shane, and we've already said hi, and Siraj. Yeah, heaps of people. Yeah. Chris Henk. There you go.
84, 85 and counting. It's quite
85 and counting. Outstanding.
So no hiding, guys. Wrap those questions out.
Yeah, so we got a few that are coming through. I thought we're forming a bit of a backlog here.
Go to the Alexa app.
Oh, hang on. Let me just turn my
Alexa app.
Just give me a second. Alexa wants to play.
Alexa, what is Davie's bank account number?
Hey, you got to say Dawie. She doesn't recognize Dawie.
Oh, of course, Dawie. We went for a whole voice training, Dawie, for your name.
Did you?
It's quite funny. Yeah.
Good. Don't worry. I've been called some strange things, so don't worry about it.
That's all right. Well, the Kiwis still call me Mike, so I've owned it.
All right,
Kola,
come on.
First question.
Back to question. So I got from Excellent 911. Hello, long time listener, first time caller. Thank you for that. What do you do when you think the exec want change and those on the ground want change, but the going is very slow? So there's your first question.
I'm not so sure that that's a question more than it is an observation, because there are so many dimensions that one would have to examine to understand. Is it slow? Or do you just feel that it's slow? Or does the exec feel that it's slow? Do the people who are undergoing this change feel that it's slow or not? So the speed of these changes is entirely subjective. The second part to it is, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a callback to the point that we made earlier about when people learn things. And one of those, the callback is to the fact that we shouldn't assume that people understand the spirit and the key principles or base principles of what it is that we're actually trying to do. And hence the perception of it taking long or slow is often colored by not truly understanding the depth of the work that needs to be done in order to land the change. Slow is not a concept that I actually recognize. And by the way, I've had this debate and had to defend programs of change against multiple CEOs over the years, because their job is to be impatient. Right, it's literally what they get paid for, is to get results for the organization in this financial year, so that shareholders, stakeholders, etc., all can be happy with our performance.
I thought we could get results in changing a culture in 3 months. Is that not true?
It is true. It can, but perhaps not the change that you think you're going to get.
Yeah. And we're not being facetious there. Excellent 911. What a great name.
That's a
Excellent
great
911.
question. Yeah.
But yeah, slow is very subjective. I agree. So Dawie, from your point of view then, right, if you were going to take an organization that's command and control, management style, not leadership, processes are throwing over the, what do you guys call it?
Fence, gate.
Throwing over the fence, bureaucracy galore, standard company, right? And you want to go to a people-centric culture with empowerment, strategic agility, and better organizational outcomes. I know it's how long's a piece of string, but give someone a ballpark figure. Is it 3 months or 3 years?
So who are we trying to satisfy with the numbers that we want to paint, right? Because the fact is that once you start on a journey from such a state, it's a never-ending iteration. So if I was looking at it with my eyes, there would be no end state. But knowing that often these kind of things have to be reported to boards in annual financials, etc., as being indicators of success or indicators of progress, I think that what you need to do is to set an 18-month boundary on it, because that's about as much tolerance as anybody has nowadays for programs of work, knowing that during that 18-month period, you need to be laying the foundations for the enduring and continuing improvement of the organization afterwards. And that has to be one of the key deliverables. And I'm not even guessing, just because, I'm just, as some of you may know, I'm actually rolling out of an awesome gig that I just had in Australia, running a very, very large transformation program. And that was the focus, is as a program, we needed to cease to exist after, give or take 18 months. But that we needed to have established enough of the operating rhythm, the behaviors, the coaching techniques and support and practices that it becomes a self-sustaining capability for the organization. So if what you want to do is satisfy the board and have something to publish, then I think that you should have something to say after your third quarter. And then you should have a whole bunch to say after 18 months.
I think that's a good time frame. Kola, what do you think of that time frame? 18 months is reasonable, I think.
To me, it's always been pace layering. So I like fast and slow. So I think there's a kind of layer that you can kind of speed up and kind of create a space for exploring a little bit ahead of where you are, and encouraging people to figure out how to explore safely and effectively. And then there's a kind of layer that just transforms slowly but surely, over time, and you almost, it's not an intentional thing almost. It's something that gets dragged into place by some of the other factors and structures that you introduce, and very much led by the culture and where it kind of wants to go, and the opportunities that are opened up. Half of it's permission based, isn't it, Dawie? I mean, we saw this a lot on the ground, where people just needed permission and freedom to kind of to get in there, and they're often looking around for it half the time, and they just needed someone to come in and make it safe.
Yeah. That's such an important point. Just the other day, I was having such a fantastic conversation with somebody who I've worked with closely over the years, doing with change and culture work and so forth. And she asked me whether or not one of the techniques that we had used with great success in a previous organization, whether or not we should get after that and start working on the culture of this particular organization that she was working on. And I had to think about that for a little bit, and think about the difference between when we did it together and where she was doing it now. And one of the key differences was that the last time we did it together, I was the leader who was privileged enough to have custody of that entire change journey. Where she's working now, I asked her whether or not she had actually been invited into those leaders' homes in order to come and change the culture of their teams. And that leads me to an add-on point to that, is that, that sort of time frame question that you asked. One of the things that I've often thought about is, and actually I think about this every time, is what would I do differently next time? What could I improve? How could we make this a better and more pleasant and empowering experience for everybody, and quicker, and blah, 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 all those benefits. And one of the points that's always stuck with me, or one of the views that I've held for a long time, is that if we could have discrete time up front to spend educating the leaders on the foundational principles, the first principles of what it is that these practices bring, and their behaviors that make them successful, et cetera, and then embark on the journey, I think we would see a massive acceleration effect as we lead differently, as we lead change differently, and do change differently.
And that's one of my questions as well, is, where do you start?
Yeah. Where do you start?
Me and Kola, for context, we're brought in, right?
I
People
know.
like you have already made that choice and said, right, we need a partner. I like Kola. He's got a cool moustache. We'll bring him in. He'll do some cool stuff, right?
Yep.
But where do you? Because you're on the ground. You are the experts who see the concerns, the problems, and want to make change. So where do you start? What's your first thought?
Is that a question for me or for Colard?
For you, Dawie.
Nice try.
Actually, I was born an unreasonably dissatisfied person. So the first time I run into friction, what I believe is unreasonable friction or unreasonable distance for people from their purpose, I start there. And what I start with is not necessarily with changing things, but I start with trying to understand what other symptoms are going to be around the place if I'm seeing this one, right? Is to understand the system, is to go to the work, to examine, to seek to understand what is actually going on in the organization, right? And this involves lots of picture drawing for me, lots and lots of picture drawing. And Colard would have seen some of this in action over the years, right? Hundreds of hours in front of whiteboards with different people, until I get a sense of it's perhaps not the root cause, but it might be the most apparent bottleneck for me, the most apparent cause of discomfort and of friction in the organization. And that's normally where I would start at the technical level to lift that particular bottleneck and then respond to each of the next bottlenecks that will result from having fixed this one. Most importantly for me, though, here we're talking about how the system works and how the process works and how work flows and all this kind of beautiful stuff, which is fantastic because you can draw it on a board. For me, one of the leading indicators of where to start, actually, besides for that, is where are people the most consistently miserable?
Love it. So you focus in. So what I'm hearing, you focus in on the people and why they're dissatisfied or disengaged, or as opposed to going, you're unproductive, you need a new way of working. You go, actually, these people are not happy, which will, as a byproduct, give you more productivity. So you look for the I guess that concern first. How do you measure that? How would you?
I love the word productivity because it's such a massively loaded term in our world today. Productivity. How do I quantify? So let's start off by saying that one of my very deeply held beliefs is that there are very, very few people who get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to work to do as rubbish a job as I possibly can. And there are also very few people who come away from a day of having done rubbish work. There are very few people who don't know that it was rubbish work. And often in their minds, it will be rubbish work for a couple of reasons. The first of those reasons would be, A, they didn't have line of sight of what the intent of that work was. So they didn't understand what the actual purpose was. B, it didn't actually leverage any of their what they believe their true potential or true skills are. So it wouldn't have leveraged their creativity, might not have leveraged their analytical capabilities, whatever it is that their skills are. And they then tend to go home frustrated. And rightly so. But even worse is they then get up the next morning and come back to work frustrated again, and they start the day frustrated, and it's a horrible spiral downwards. In that situation, what people very often do is they then learn what are the markers of their reward. So what is the minimum that they need to do in order to unlock that reward? It's a little bit like gameplay, and then they focus on doing those things, knowing that they're not going to get a different style of satisfaction other than that. And if that's what they need to do, then they're going to do the minimum effort to unlock those markers. So it's actually a spiral, starting with the fact that people feel disconnected or disjointed from something bigger than themselves.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, I'll go, Color.
Well, I wonder if we've got an opportunity to take another question. And before, who's that?
I found one. Nived Hita. Hi, Dawie. How do you approach this scenario when you are midway through a transformation and some of the team members are unhappy that their purpose within the organization is seeming to get lost?
Yes. So this is not uncommon. And purpose is a large word. most often the way I see that manifest is that as the organization changes towards things like cross-functional teams and moves away from hierarchy-based seniority and the like, what you're actually seeing people feel disjointed from is not necessarily their purpose, but it is their identity. And that's because people very often will attach their identity to A, their title, and B, their rung in the hierarchical ladder of the organization. The last part that happens very often is that when you go into the organizational style of cross-functional teams, it's very often people will feel that they're being disconnected from their profession if they come from an organization where they used to be grouped in that profession. So if you were an organization that used to have software developer as a team and tester as a team and lawyer as a team and whatever it is, and suddenly they are a member of a squad or bubble or whatever you want to call your team construct, they feel that loss of identity. And that's actually more often what you run into rather than their sense of their loss of purpose. Now, that doesn't last particularly long because the minute that the teams truly start forming, they actually start acknowledging each other's value. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to work on having in place the professional home for these people, because that need doesn't go away. One of the questions we had, this was going back probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now, was actually from a lawyer who said, if I join one of these teams, do I stop being a lawyer?
Yeah.
Right, is where do I go to check in with other lawyers and understand whether I'm lawyering well, right? Which is how the concept in the sort of Spotify construct comes, the chapter construct comes into being, is to create that professional home for professional practitioners. So it's not necessarily about their purpose and their value. It's much more often about their identity and their sense of belonging to those pieces that make up their identity.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
I guess also when you talk about psychological safety, I know that word's overused constantly. But from when especially an employee is going through a transformation where it's not truly articulated their worth after the transformation. And I always remember a story. My job, and this sounds terrible, but this is where I came from, right? So I was an ex-accountant. Before then, I was a financial maneuver of money. And one of my jobs was to release 70 contractors from a SAP implementation because they were unproductive. Of course they were. They're useless, right? And I realized it wasn't the fact they didn't want to do the new work, is they didn't know where they fit in at the end of the process.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And when I communicate with them where they would be, what they would do, what their new purpose would be based on the new vision of the organization, over half of them were like, this is amazing. And we had 24% of them took a permanent job.
Yeah.
So they loved it.
Yeah. Let's take a step back from it, because we're talking a lot about some of the symptoms and some of the sort of manifestations of change. But I actually think and we spoke about education, we spoke about MBAs. I'm about to jump onto one of my favorite hobby horses, because we're all taught the strategy cycle in a very particular way. We're taught that the strategy cycle starts with having a grand vision, right? So that's the North Star for us. This is our purpose. And we tend to then go away and we take our purpose and we then break that down into a strategy, which is actually nothing more than the large plan, the longer term plan for how we're going to take the hill, fly to the star, colonize Mars, whatever it is. And the next step for us then is to understand, in order to execute on this grand plan of ours, what are the abilities that we need to have? What do we need to be good at in order to execute on this plan? Our logical mind has a particular need for compartmentalizing things, for simplifying things. For me, that manifests when I eat M&Ms and stuff. I actually semi-apologize. I know I told the story this morning. Is I tend to first pour out all the M&Ms on the table, and then I'll group them by color, and then I'll group them into even rows in those colors, and then I'll eat all the odds. And so there's a process for me, and for me that's a sense-making process, and it's also one of the core jobs of any leader. So knowing what those capabilities are that your organizations need in order to execute the grand plan. The next thing we tend to do is we tend to say, okay, we need to be great at software development. Okay, good. Let's have a software development team. And we need to be great at this and that and the other. And we end up making boxes of those things. And then we tend to organize those into our organizational design, our structure. The next thing we then need to do is we need to be able to govern how work goes to those boxes and comes from those boxes, and et cetera, et cetera. So our control mechanisms get put in place, our resource management mechanisms, our financial recovery mechanisms, et cetera, all to facilitate the flow of the work from one box to the other so that we can get the work popping out on the other side. And the last thing we often think about is and it actually comes as a surprise, that people hate working in our organization because then our culture is broken. And my hypothesis is this, is if we turn that on its head, and at the point where we understand the abilities that we need in order to execute the mission, we need to spend the same amount of time on what that culture looks like that allows people to bring their whole selves with those abilities into the intent or the vision and the mission of our organization, i.e., how do we enlist the entire team with their hearts, their souls, their thinking, their creativity in the making of the grand outcome, in the colonization of Mars. And if we do that, and we then only adopt the controls and the methods and the governance and the systems that we need in order to make both of those things effective, both the ability and the experience, that's when we build great organizations. And that's how we stay true to our mission originally. So for us, actually, the root of all of this change is for us to say, how do we hijack the strategy process rather than how do we change the working method on the ground?
And it's one of the main concerns that we get in our industry is that we're brought in, as you said, to, hey, our IT department's not doing very good. Can you please do something? Agile sounds good. Thank you. And
Yes.
and it's like, well, what's your strategy? Where's your vision? Where's your culture?
Sprinkle some DevOps on it.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things we talk about in the show. It's like coaches can get away with sprinkling some success criteria and then running away with lots of money. And where's the value in that? And I guess the problem comes for us is we can run away. You can't.
Yeah.
You're a permanent staff member. You're accountable. So leads me on to my next question, actually. Do I want to ask it now in a minute? Now. How do you measure success of a transformation?
Yeah. Now, again, this depends entirely on the reason you're doing the transformation.
Cool.
Yeah. One of the lessons I learned very early was that if you are going to be doing things or suggesting things that are out of the norm for the organization, you have to create a credible measure that is within the norm for the organization. And you mentioned IT. I come from an IT background. There's nothing I love more than enterprise IT shops, right? They're deeply populated with smart folks. And one of the hardest things to measure is the effectiveness or the flow or the productivity of such an organization. If I was running a factory, it would be quite easy. I'd be measuring the takt time of the factory, right? How many units are coming out? What's my production cost? How much WIP is there? How many parts are falling on the floor? How much downtime do we have on the production line? And unfortunately, in software, you can't really do that. And you can't do it for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is that the work is not repeatable. It's not the same work every time. However, there has to be some way to measure it, because when I go and I speak to the CFO about the fact that I need X amount of money in order to get all these expensive coaches in, looking at you guys, he's going to say, what do I expect in return? Right. Yeah. And there has to be some, as an executive, it's my responsibility to give him an answer for that. Earlier, you said, people see they do this agile thing, they get 30% less people or 30% better productivity, or whatever that measure happens to be. And that is true. However, it doesn't have to manifest the way they think it manifests. Right. But you have to give them the alternate credible metric that they believe that they can actually use in order to satisfy themselves that they're allowing you to do something safe. I like the halo there.
Yeah, nice color.
So over the years, and I wonder if Stuart Penning is on the call. I'm hoping he is. Yeah. Stuart's done some absolutely groundbreaking work.
Mike Lentworth is on the line.
Hey, yeah, Mike, nice to see you, mate. Also, there's somebody else. I wonder if Willem Viljoen has made it onto the call. I see, Willem, you registered for the call. It's Matt, I'm so happy to see. I haven't seen you in 10 years. It's so cool to see you on the call. Welcome. What we did, Stuart and I came to Stuart with an impossible proposition. I arrived at Stuart's desk one day, this was in 2015, and I said to Stuart, hey mate, listen, I need to be able to prove the relative effectiveness of the throughput of work of software development from concept to cash, regardless of method. And he sort of sat back, okay, and started working through a couple of concepts which you'll recognize, right? Because the combination of factors that you want to see in play when you measure this thing is, yes, you want to know how much money we're throwing at the thing and how many people are in our organization, all that kind of stuff. And that's interesting as a baseline of the quantum of how much money effectively we have in this problem domain. As importantly, actually what you want to know is you want to know how well is the information flowing from one block in your waterfall to the next block. In other words, what is the loss in fidelity that is caused by the handoff, right? The second thing that you want to know is how many of those handoffs are there, because then you can quantify the loss in fidelity by the number of handoffs, and very soon you get to a negative return scenario. The next thing you want to know is how many of those handoffs can be avoided. In other words, if I start thinking through the constitution of my teams and I can reduce those, guys, this is not rocket science, right? This is what Agile's all about, right? But if you can start quantifying that stuff and put a number to it, a dollar value to it, suddenly you're in the CFO's territory, right? So the metric that we came up with, structural efficiency, takes into account all of those things. It takes into account wait time, it takes into account the level of work, it takes into account the number of handoffs, the team constitutions, the number of release or the release frequency. This is pretty interesting stuff, right? So what Stu contributed to the thinking was that a feedback opportunity is only a feedback opportunity if it's actually a feedback opportunity, right? Not if you're making shelfware, right? If your software is sitting in pre-prod, then it's basically avocados in the sun, mate. That stuff's going to go off like in no time flat.
Yeah.
So the model that Stu built actually rewards feedback opportunities and whether or not you chose to use the feedback. Now think about it. This is like a perfect measure of DevOps, right? Of continuous delivery, of Agile, of all those things. Most importantly, it's articulated as a percentage, and that percentage can easily be translated into cents in the dollar. So the first time we measured at Westpac in New Zealand, we measured at 25 cents in the dollar. And that the minute we started looking at it, it got worse, went down to 23 cents in the dollar. And as you can imagine, the CFO was bloody horrified. Said, so hang on. And the CFOs are smart folks, regardless of what we might think. The first thing he looked at me, he said, so help me understand here that we're throwing $100 million your way this year, and I'm going to get 23 cents worth of actual work back. Wow, that's shocking, right? I said to him, no. You're going to get $100 million worth of work, but only $23 million worth of that is actually going to be work that is creating the outcomes that you want. The rest is going to be running around internal business, governance, overhead, friction, noise, arguing, and that kind of stuff. And when you start having the conversation in that way, you also start putting a very critical eye over the activities that do take the walker forward and the activities that don't. Right. And you start becoming much harder on tolerating those with the support of your CFO, because as those numbers start changing, as you make changes, you see that number improving. Now, at one stage, the Westpac team got to just shy of 70 cents in the dollar as their efficiency, right, from 23. That's quite a startling number. And one of our games that Stuart and I used to play is hypothesizing about what such a maximum number can be and what the factors were that could cap that number and so forth. And it's a fantastic intellectual process. The fact is that the minute that you can articulate to your CEO and your CFO that your contribution is going up from 23 cents in the dollar to 70 cents in the dollar, you've got a winner on your hands, right? There are different ways to do that. And I know this is a very long-winded response. I'm sorry for that, but it's a complicated topic. There are different ways to do it. But the first thing you need to do is you need to create a baseline and then measure from there and prove it.
You're speaking my language. My next role was CFO. So that would have been one of those annoying people who said no to you guys quite often. But it's because, and what bugs me the most is the lack of measuring. Just give me the current state. I don't care how you measure it. Measure it in customer satisfaction, brand loyalty, efficacy, productivity. I don't care. Just tell me the current state. Tell me where you're going. Let me measure that benefit. I'm happy. Give me an IIR. Give me an MPV. Give me whatever acronym you want. Just give me something. And we go to these.
Now, the one caution I'll put to you, Michael, is that a measure like that. If you design it well, it needs sorry.
Yep.
A measure like that, and you're right, you could use any of those commercial metrics. The downside of those commercial metrics is that none of them is particularly inspiring.
They're
not. There's nowhere in your there's no one in your software dev shop who's going to be particularly enthused about improving your internal rate of return, right? But what they can see is that if we make an impassioned plea to get rid of the stupid handoff between the developers and the testers, that our structural efficiency goes up, and we can actually point to it and say, dude, you got to change this because it's costing us money and we want to be more efficient, make the change, right? Then you've got both a empirical measure of the improvement of the efficiency. You've also got something that people want to improve.
Yeah. I'm 100% in there. I think doing a board and C-suite, it is all about how do you link that customer value back to profit. You know, you talk to some chief people officers and they'll say, well, actually, I want cultural metrics. And I love that. But majority of them want to know their quarter is going to be more profitable than last quarter, right? So I talk that language quite well. And then, of course, no one cares. So from my own study, I realized that no one cared about how much profit an organization made or what the internal rate of return was. No one cares about that. But they did care about happier customers because they were receiving the product that somebody built and it made them happy. So yeah, I totally agree. There's levels, they all link, but you show the value in different levels depending on who you're talking to. I love what you and Stuart did there. By the way, Stuart is on the call.
Hey, Stu, nice to not see you. Nice to hear from you, mate.
Kola, just so you know, by the way, we have 2 chats going. We've got LinkedIn chat and we've got a YouTube chat. So I'm looking at the LinkedIn chat as well. And so kia ora, Stuart, Stuart P, kia ora, Karen Dallas, kia ora,
Karen.
Chris.
Hey, Karen.
Sorry, Karen. Kia ora, Chris Tuhoy.
Hey, Chris Tui. Hey, Chris.
Chris Tui. Yeah.
Is it Tui? I've been calling you Tuhoy for ages, mate. I'm too apologise. I'm terrible with names.
It's Tui like the bird, but not spelled that way.
That's so bad. So Chris is coming on the show in a few weeks' time, funny enough.
Oh, wicked.
So that's gonna be good fun. Who else is there? Kia ora Venus, kia ora Nevedhita, kia ora Sandy, and kia ora Scott. Oh, awesome. That was really, and I would love to talk to you more about that, but we have a whole heap of questions coming in.
Go.
So Kola, pick one. What's the next one you want to go to?
All right. Do you get the teams involved in identifying and implementing the improvements?
Yes, unequivocally, yes. Yes. I'm going to just say yes and leave it there.
That's a good one. Let's pick another one. What's the biggest learning you have taken from any one of your 4 large organizations, enterprise organizations?
Oh, that's a massive question.
That's a Mr. Mike Clentworth question right there.
Yeah, nice job. Good setup there, Mike. Let me show you something. I'm going to grab my camera and see if I can do this without screwing up our broadcast. So you see those little sticky notes over there?
Oh, yes.
Is each of those columns is one role that I've had over the last, I'm not going to say how many years, make me feel old. But what I've been doing is a little bit of introspection. Oh my goodness, did I just put myself in the dark there? There's a little bit of introspection to answer exactly that question.
Nice.
And actually, the common thread for me has been that the times where I have felt that our transformations were going to be enduring, were going to be lasting, were the times where we led with the how does your day at work feel when you're working in my organization question. And each of the iterations of change that we've done over the years has had the question to a greater or a lesser degree, but the ones that I'm most proud of, the ones that I certainly want to, reiterate and do again and again, are the ones where those changes were led by people's satisfaction with coming to work every day. Our responsibility, Michael, it's I always find it hard to express just what a heavy responsibility it is as leaders that we have when people are committing more time to us than they're committing to their families. And what that means for our responsibility to make sure that they're coming away fulfilled beyond getting paid, right? Because getting paid is hygiene. But taking the sense of membership of something large, of contribution, of ownership, of having been trusted, those are things that you can't buy, but should get every day at work.
I totally agree. And I'm reading a book actually, funny enough, Sim recommended, and apparently you recommended to Colot as well, Edge, by Jim and I forgot everyone's name, Lou and Andy.
Yeah.
So far, great book.
A bunch of the thought workers, yeah.
ThoughtWorks, that's right. And one comment that resonates to me, what you just said, is it says that the return on investment for an organization is a constraint. It's not the reason why the company exists. And I think that in the first 2 chapters is perfect. And it aligns exactly the same for my purpose, Colot's purpose, for your purpose. We spend more time with these people than we do with our own families. So making an impact here has a better impact in their lives.
So remember that ROI is calculated off an internal cash rate or an internal rate of return. And the internal rate of return is actually a measure of the organization's optimism at its ability to deliver those returns. So when you discount to that level, you're actually discounting to the belief that you have in your teams.
Yeah, and it sometimes could just be a percentage on top of a bank rate.
Yeah, correct. And that's most often because you've had to finance the funding for this, which is why that's the base of it.
Yeah. It's not exactly a moonshot.
No.
Yeah, cool. All right, next question.
Another book that I would like to recommend, by the way, if you haven't had it yet, there's Jonathan Smart was a transformation leader at Barclays for many, many years, and I've known John for a long, long time, and he published a book called Sooner, Safer, Happier.
Yep.
Which is also the approach that he takes in it, which I really enjoy, is he takes a patterns and anti-patterns approach to these large transformation journeys, right? So he tells you what it looks like when it works, and he also tells you what it looks like when it's definitely not going to work. So I do recommend this book.
I 100% agree, and I like to recommend it as well. Also, if you know Jonathan, he declined to come on the show, so if you could poke him to come on the show, because I really want to talk about that book, because it's a brilliant little book. It only came out during COVID, and it hits the nail on the head on almost not a step-by-step process, but it's near on a step-by-step process. So Jonathan, come on the show. You
don't have to look that far for absolute genius in this game, mate. You only have to look to Wellington and speak to Rob England and Dr. Cherry Vu, who wrote a beautiful book called The Agile Manager, Agile with a small a manager. Magic, mate, magic. Yeah, you want those folks on your show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. No. And if anyone wants to come on the show, anybody wants to recommend someone on the show, please grab a wine. Friday nights, 8 p.m. Agility Matters. There was one question. What is your current book you're reading at the moment you're really enjoying?
Wow. I am currently actually doing a whole bunch of online reading. So I've got a couple of books on the go at the moment, but I wouldn't call any of them out. One of them actually happens to be Edge, which I'm diving in on Sim's recommendation. I'm doing a whole bunch of discovery around the state of financial services in general, and most importantly, trying to discover for myself what the shortcomings are in the traditional approach to the financial services industry and philosophy, and what those shortcomings are as it pertains to the exclusion and inclusion of different groups within our society, everything from Maori to women to children to the aged, etc., etc. I mentioned earlier that I'm a consistently unreasonably dissatisfied person, and I've always dreamt of the day that we could make a fundamental change to the way that financial services actually serve people and communities. I'm also a huge science fiction reader. I love science fiction. In fact, one of my very favorite objects in my entire world is this little book over here, which is why it happens to live right there. Don't squint, I'll show you. This little book was originally written as a radio show in 1978. And this is an autographed copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams.
You're nice. Yeah.
So science fiction, the interesting thing about science fiction when you read a lot of it is that there are always references to money of some sort, right? There's always a currency or a value or a credit because people have to pay for stuff in most cases. Some of the more dystopian stuff doesn't have it, but most of it has a value exchange of some sort. And when there's a Lilu Dallas multipass paying for Corbin Dallas's driver's license in his taxi, or whatever the case may be. There has to be a store of that value. There has to be a transfer of that value. There has to be an identification of the person who owns it, an identification of the destination, all those kind of things. Those are foundational to financial services. What you almost never hear is a reference to a bank.
Nope.
Is that this exchange of value and this creation of value and this holding of value is actually a seamless part of the daily life of people, and is not the highlight of their lives. It is the mechanism by which they live their lives, and that's what I want to explore and see. How do we make that real for everybody in society, not just for folks who are financially literate or for folks who bank in a top tier bank?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get into this, but you and me can chat about this, because I have had a theory for about a good number of years now that bank is commoditizing, and the end of the banking era is nigh. Now, I know there's like HSBC, ANZ, Westpac, and Kiwi Bank all on this call right now, and I'm sorry, guys. That's just my thought process. That's how I see it. We can chat in the comments later. But this
actually, actually,
if you're interested.
you're not wrong at all. Which is why you're seeing different banks adopt different strategies to become foundational and enduring parts of this ecosystem. You see the emergence of neobanks. Most of those neobanks actually focus on the customer experience. Many of those neobanks are actually banked elsewhere underneath. A couple of them have their own banking systems. You'll see many of those who have their own banking systems actually start offering those backends as bank as a service platforms for others. And that's because they also acknowledge the stratification of the financial services industry into hygiene layer or commodity layer, into interaction layer, and then into live your life layer, if you will. And you see them play at each of those layers differently. The thing that holds most of the traditional banks back from making their core banking platforms available as a service to others actually is the legacy of those platforms doesn't actually allow it. And this is why you see things like the investment by Westpac specifically in offering 10x as a service to other financial fintechs in Australia, because that then starts establishing them as the go-to if you need the hygiene banking services, right? And the hygiene banking services are hold the money, protect the money, transfer the money, settle the payments. Those are basic financial services functions. So, and that's a conversation I've had at many strategy tables in banks over the last 10 years.
Oh, I love it. I'm pretty certain because I was at a major bank, and the reason why we didn't see eye to eye was because I was publicizing crypto all the time. Question. So, Kola, I've gone to LinkedIn because they've asked a few questions. We kind of ignored them. Sorry, guys.
I can't find the LinkedIn chat.
No, you've got to join the chat, and then you can see
that's what I need to do. All right.
I saw Carrie on the call as well.
Yes, Carrie Burgess.
Yeah. Hey, Carrie, nice to see you. I see Jeff Johnson on the call. Jeff, nice
I see Jackie Shen's just joined.
Jackers.
Hey, Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
It seems like a reunion.
It is. It's amazing.
Kind of is, yeah.
I know none of you guys. I feel like I'm the newbie who's coming in going, hey, everyone. All right.
I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to make a great number of friends along the way, and a large number of them are on this call. So thank you. It's great to see you all. Kia ora.
I love it. Kia ora. Hey, quick then. What's everyone drinking? Everyone seems to care every week, so it's brilliant.
I used to be drinking, but because we've been talking so much, there's not that much left of it. Who's drinking what?
So I'm drinking, because I bought something especially for you, Dawie. 19 Crimes, The Uprising. I thought this is really good. It's like a criminal.
Is that even a wine?
It doesn't even say it's a Shiraz. It just says red.
Just red.
Right?
Very good.
But I like it because it's got like a criminal thing going on. It's a bad guy. The uprising, I thought it was just justified.
Keeping it classy since 2021.
Oh, it's got to be done. It's got to be done. Kola, what are you on?
What am I on? I'm on Villa Maria.
Oh, very good. Very nice. Keeping it local. Nice.
That's right.
Nice. Yeah. So my favorite wine is in my glass. It used to be in my glass. Happens to be a Belveny Doublewood 12-year-old single malt.
Hello.
You just upped it from my $12 bottle of wine. Right. AJ. By the way, Dawie.
Yeah, AJ. Nice to see you, mate. I've got as much time as you need.
All right, cool. We got as much time until my camera runs out of battery. Right. And even then, you guys can carry on. What's the biggest challenge in getting traditional plan, build, run, and siloed shops excited about going cross-functional? Do you show them the big picture of how it all aligns, have them find their place in the diagram, and go big bang? Oh, I love the big bang question.
Big bang.
Or do you
Feels like a setup.
Small? Yeah, it does a little bit, doesn't it? Or do you start small with a crack squad, who get it, are advocates, working on a hero initiative and show the to-be converteds that it does actually work, and have them visually see, this is a very long question, AJ, experience the aha moments for themselves?
Yeah, I wouldn't do either of those things actually. No, and actually, this is from experience, because back in the day when I first attempted this kind of change back at Standard Bank, we did the crack squad thing, and it was massively cool and exciting, and we were DevOpsing like demons, and we had the geniuses from Chef all over us, and it was just an absolutely awesome and amazing time of learning. but it was an awesome and amazing time of learning only for the crack squad, the small cohort of leaders who were giving them the air cover, and everybody else learned to resent them quite quickly because they were getting the air cover and they were getting all the cool toys. The Big Bang approach has the opposite, is that when you do change two people, and you presuppose the answers, you're actually disrespecting their contribution to that answer. You're not giving them the opportunity to contribute. So I actually prefer the approach where you do encourage the Mavericks and the Misfits and the firebrands to try some things and talk about them loudly, but not to concentrate them all in the same place. When you're going to set a field on fire, I know this is a slightly un-PC analogy, but you tie a torch to a fox's tail and you chase it into the field. This used to be a Roman practice, by the way. But if you really want to burn the place down, you tie that torch to many foxes and you chase them all into the field, because then you set the whole place on fire all at once. And that's actually what you want. And again, this was actually, funny enough, a question that we had this morning, because that can feel scary and disempowering for the leaders of an organization. Yeah. And here's the trick. The trick is to, firstly understand what the job of leaders are, right? The job of a leader is to manage the system of the organization, not to manage the work of the organization. Managing the work of the organization is the job of the people who do that work. That's why we hire smart people to do that work. So you have to give some thought to what you believe the hypothesis is for what the system looks like, or could look like, or might look like. So this is why educating leaders up front is very important, right? So that they don't just gravitate towards the first thing that looks systematic, because then they'll very easily become dogmatists in the scaled agile world, or in the DAD world, or whatever. Pick a framework, because they're all represented quite nicely and logically in a way that people think, I'll take this and I'll make that, and it'll be done. But you want to school people into understanding enough about the techniques and the nuances of each of those to be able to say, I think that because of the diversity of the work in this particular area, this is potentially a great place for us to do some experimentation about the techniques around agile and design thinking and iterative experimentation with customers and the like. Or because the work here looks very standardized, this might be a place where some of the techniques from the lean school might take post quite easily, and so on. And the trick is then to understand what the actual experiences of people in those areas, and then to expose them to some of those techniques and let them try them. You keep the grand plan in your back pocket, right? That's something that you use to keep yourself sane, or to drive yourself insane, because the guarantee is that the organization is not going to look that way when you're done. But at the very least, you're keeping a systematic look, a progressive look at what's happening in your organization, so that you can understand whether or not those changes are productive, unproductive, taking you in a decent direction, useful direction, or maybe that you don't understand enough about your organization to have made that decision in the first place. Because the assumptions that leaders lead from the front is fatally flawed, right? Leaders nudge and they learn and they observe, and they keep context, and they maintain a clear view of intent for everybody. And beyond that, what they need to do is make sure that nobody falls on their scissors while they're running with scissors in their hand.
Great answer. I love it. Should we go YouTube, Kolar? I see there's a whole bunch of questions on YouTube.
There's one that we kind of skipped over a little while back, and I see that Jean has reposted it. Yeah, so Jean-Michel Cateau, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, kia ora. So Dawie, when initiating a Greenbelt transformation project, how do you hold the team accountable for change, possibly because they are afraid of the changes?
I'm entirely unsure of what a Greenbelt transformation is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is that a Six Sigma?
Six Sigma.
Yeah.
So that's when you, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone on the call, but Six Sigma will be, you are going for efficiency, not productivity. So you are basically looking at your processes end to end, mapping the entire process end to end, and then basically ensuring that everything has value. Yeah. Think of an extreme lean transformation.
Yeah. So let's dwell on the word accountable and holding accountable. Because it's impossible to give accountability or to hold someone accountability. People take accountability. And if your team is in the space where you need to hold them accountable, or my favorite corporate analogy, where you have to identify a single throat to choke, then you're being a piss poor leader, and your team is going to resent you deeply, because you're leading with blame, recrimination, and consequence, rather than leading with intent, creativity, collaboration, and outcome. What I've most often found when you lead with the latter is that teams will hold themselves accountable much harder than you can. Is that they will hold themselves to a standard that you wouldn't have contemplated. And that's because at the end of the day, people have the need to feel proud of their work and proud of their outcome. Now, if what you're after is efficiency in the more cynical of the corporate senses, i.e. having less people on your floor, then you have a different piece of work on your hand. And I'm not going to say that that's never necessary, because it is often necessary, because organizations become bloated beyond sustainability. They do. And controversially, I believe that that's a failure of leadership, not a failure of our people. And one of the tragedies for me over many iterations of my career has been how little consequence there actually is when the same leaders make the same mistake and unleash the same consequence on their teams, year after year and iteration after iteration. And that's obviously,
How do you balance BAU with Agile? Transformation project versus our bread and butter.
Yes,
that old chestnut. We've got Venus Fesolai. Thank you very much for that, Venus. Also,
question.
how many projects or initiatives, this is all part of the same question, is recommended to work on at any given time for it to be effective? So that old BAU versus change.
There is no BAU versus change. There is only work. And all work flows into one backlog, and that backlog is prioritized on the basis of value. So as long as you're distinguishing BAU from project, you're not working in an agile space. Then what you're doing is you're doing agile project, which is an oxymoron.
Like military intelligence.
I don't know. I drove ships.
We had an ex-army person on the call as well, by the way.
Hello, Army.
You made it.
Sorry, I am pro Army, Linton crew. Although I was mostly working with the Air Force.
That's how the Army describes the Air Force.
Yeah, I have some stories about that. I can't say live, so I'll tell you guys afterwards. How do you balance Agile with BAU? It comes up time and time again. It's a lack of, again, Venus, I don't mean to say you have a lack of understanding. I mean, it's an industry-wide lack of understanding that Agile is for projects, which is, anyway. But Agile is for CapEx, is kind of where it comes to, right? The capitalization of projects is, contractors, that kind of thing. That's where Agile lays. And the boring BAU operational things. Now, when we look at actual value, if the BAU is not done, you lose your banking license. The loss factor on that is huge. So it's a very normal thing.
So earlier we spoke about my hypothesis on disrupting the strategy cycle, and what we're describing here very often is the tail wagging the dog, in that the belief system is driven by the infrastructure that we've created around our work and the categorizations of that work. So you mentioned the capitalization of change work versus BAU work, and my hypothesis on that is that the person doing the work should never know that. Because what you're expecting is you're expecting somebody who has a day job to get a task done to make a pretty important decision. And that decision is this project work or not? And that decision basically is, does this go on the balance sheet or not? Right. So what you're actually asking is you're asking somebody who is tapping a keyboard or taking a call from a customer, in that case, to make a call whether or not we should be, taking a 20-year view on this work or funding it immediately, which is frankly stupid. And that's what CFOs do.
Yeah, and
so that treatment should actually be an outflow from the completion of the work, and a conscious decision on the outflow of that work. Because also, not all project work should be capitalized, right? Let's be clear. But that should be a conscious decision. It shouldn't be a meta decision made off the back of your timesheet.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of work's going on, right? So agile finance, beyond budgeting. Agile communities try and take hold of the finance game. At the end of the day, finance has evolved quite dramatically, but local laws dictate certain things. So in New Zealand, the IRD has a specific set of capitalization measures that you need to abide by. And that's the reason why all the auditing has to be done. So I hear a lot of agile coaches say, oh, why do I have to worry about this? You have to worry about this is because the IRD will ask for an audit in 7 years' time. So there's a macro problem as well.
So that particular requirement's not that unique. I mean, these are all part of the generally accepted accounting practices that are actually a worldwide set of standards. The fact of the matter is that what you need to be able to trace back is some form of a definition of the work that allows you to reasonably capitalize it or otherwise. And that definition of the work doesn't have to be a timesheet. Is that if you set up your Jira stories in a way that you can identify what the outcome and intent of that work was, then you can actually use that as the accounting treatment. You don't have to have people on the floor doing that. What I've actually seen done quite successfully is having story templates created that allow you then to extrapolate from that. To also not only extrapolate the financial treatment, but then also the amount of effort, if you will, of that work. So you can shield people from all of that complexity. It's not necessary for them to necessarily think about it.
Again, I don't know about other industries. I know UK, I know here, so this works in both those countries. I don't know about the rest. I don't want to pretend to know about the rest, but you're right, the gap standards are everywhere. But actually breaking the work down into smaller chunks actually means it comes under the OPEX budgeting scheme, which means you get to expense that there and then. Which is a benefit to most organizations. And most CFOs I talk to are like, so I can decrease risk and I can get value early and I can remove my cash flow against my EBITDA. You can.
I'm going to yes and that point, actually.
Go for it.
To say yes, I mean, you are correct. But capitalizing is not the enemy, right? Leverage is the oil of commerce. What you have to be sure of is that you're using that leverage to fund enduring assets and not avocados. Which is why A, not all project work, not all change work should be capitalized, and B, the consideration of the lifespan of that work should be the basis on which you do decide to capitalize or otherwise. What you do see is that there is certainly a want to write off as much as possible in the same financial year, i.e. to expense it, but it's actually not appropriate for everything.
It's not. No,
what should be your measure is the fact that some things just don't have enduring life, right?
Dawie, I'd hate to finish this call without asking, where can we find out more about structural efficiency? Come on.
That's a lot of comments.
Structural efficiency is magic. A little bit of it is actually proprietary. So there's some of it that I can't share directly, but certainly I'll offer that if you do want a little bit more information conceptually, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. And without front loading or front selling Stuart, I will check with him how much time he wants to spend talking about it as well, knowing that we would probably not be able to dive into the formulas, which by the way, I've been trying for 5 years to understand, and Stuart despairs, but but certainly conceptually we can lead you through creating a model that will get you a similar set of baselines.
Wow, thank you. So I think Smina Van Leberg, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, kia ora. Hi Dawie, keen to hear how you would deal with creating consensus between various divisions from the same organization who are disincentivized to create together.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon problem. This is the problem of the boxes. This is the problem of the boundaries. And this is where you need to enlist some form of umbrella that actually crosses over both of them, because somebody needs to get those leaders together, knock their heads together and show them just how stupid this is. Because at the end of the day, no department or division on its own is bigger than the organization as a whole. And you can drive call it revolutionary change, if you will, to a point, but there does come those organizational boundaries that need the leaders to decide and show up together to articulate that change. So there isn't a different answer to that. Is that organizational boundaries represent people's identities, they represent people's, and you said it, people's incentives, people's spans of control, their relative success vis-a-vis each other in an organization, and so on. So unless those leaders are showing up together to break that boundary, it's not going to happen.
Great answer. Love it.
Do you say you had a question from Sim as well, Mike?
Yeah, I saw a question from Sim that looked really interesting as well. So bring it up for you. She has asked in LinkedIn and on YouTube.
Okay.
But I haven't brought it up yet.
From Belinda Simcox? I was just looking for it in the thread.
Yeah,
so getting amongst the weeds, a structural efficiency question, I think.
That's correct.
Was that it?
Getting amongst the weeds of the likes of structural efficiency, what are the key steps to structure the data to start to gather the baseline? What kind of thing? And what baseline, what kind of thing?
So my
question.
my answer to that always is to go to the Gemba and to follow a piece of work.
Yeah.
And then you can do this in the old days, people would do this on the back of a cigarette packet, but it's on PC to smoke now. In a notebook. Literally all that you have to do is follow that piece of work and count the handoffs. And at each handoff is take a look at the queue and take a look at the number of items before that item in the queue. And so it's start forming for yourself a hypothesis, even if it's not yet quantified, of the amount of friction and the amount of waste that there is just in the execution of that particular unit of work. And that's not that hard to do. If you're even in the fledgling stages of stories, just follow the story. Or if you're even if you're in a waterfall, just follow the requirement. And have a look at how many steps of interpretation, handoff, and wait there are along the way. Because that's really all that structural efficiency does, is it applies basic lean quantification to the waste that is in the system, the friction that's in your system. Not to denigrate Stuart's work, but that is what it does.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good clarifying point. That's why I wanted to raise it. I know we spoke about it, but that, I think, done. Nice. I would like to see more of Stuart's work and yourself's work. I think I'm gonna bug you guys. I've got a financial mind. I can help you guys because I love that. I love that stuff. And I
hope you've got a checkbook to go with that financial mind.
Yeah. No, I can pay 99 cents. It's all good. I'm wealthy like that.
Yeah, it's all good.
Cool. Next question. We're coming to the end of the questions, right? I think. Yes.
Yeah, I think we're starting to run a little low on content here. I think we've covered most of the topics actually that's here.
Awesome. Oh, brilliant.
And we got away without a single heckle from everybody online. So I suspect
there were heaps of heckles. I've been filtering.
What? Jeez, you must share.
Only kidding.
Yeah, no, I've actually been pretty good on that. So, Dawie, from your point of view, any reflections from today's session?
Yeah. Today, this is not even the first time I've had the opportunity to have these conversations today, and for me it's been massively gratifying and encouraging to see a huge groundswell of interest, not necessarily in the cosmetic manifestations of Agile and of Lean and all these things, but in understanding the mechanics and the principles that make it work. And to me, that's very encouraging. People have moved beyond the hype cycle. Of going agile and doing agile techniques and stuff into understanding why do they work, and that's probably the most important shift that can happen. It does mean that for those of us that are method purists, it's going to be disconcerting because you're going to see a whole bunch of really creative uses of these techniques break out all over the show, and they're not going to look the way that you want them to look because they're not going to fit those boxes. And it actually leads us into one of the most important roles as coaches and as leaders, is to be educated to the point where you can be in the state of as you help these teams, right? As you get into the state where you can actually improvise in your knowledge with them and for them. Because they're going to go into SHU immediately, right? They're all going to learn Scrum. I mean, I guarantee 90% of people are going to learn Scrum almost immediately, and even better, get certified. Fantastic. But unless you're a coach who has a wide knowledge of all techniques, you're not going to be able to help them when they get frustrated with the shortcomings of the one technique that they're learning now. And you need to be able to do it in a cosseting manner that says, I want you to be in SHU. I want you to be very proficient at these motions before we add the next one. But when we add the next one, I suggest it be this one, and not necessarily be driven by the dogma of the method that they happen to be in. Because then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be tailoring the answer to the pain of the team and to the needs of the work, and that's a very important coaching accountability.
That's a good point. I have two side questions to that reflection, if that's all right. One, should leaders be coaches?
That's not a bad question, and it's one that I've struggled with over the years. And I think that when you're the leader, leading in the battle, that you're not objective enough to be the coach for all your teams. It doesn't mean it doesn't. And one of my favorite experiences, Carlot, you might remember this, is we had as one of our colleagues for a while, Jimmy Janlin, who spent, I think that him and his partner were on our floor for nearly a year. And the wonderful thing about Jimmy Janlin is Jimmy doesn't give a shit about the corporate stuff. What he cares about is the purity of the experience of the people, and are they being able to bring themselves. And Jimmy did a great job at keeping me honest in those times when I was getting massively enthused about one thing or another. And he would come to me and he would look at me. And for those of you who know Jimmy, Jimmy does a fantastic stern face. Jimmy would look at me and say, "But why, Dawie? But why?" And then we would have to go back to first principles, and 90% of the time he was seeing somewhere where I was letting my fierce devotion to the cause get in the way of the pragmatism of the answer that the team actually needed. So I think it's a very rare place where a leader should be the coach or the only coach for teams that are trying to adopt a significantly different set of working practices. It's also why in my recent experience at Westpac over in Australia, we spent a lot of time designing a magnificent coaching practice. I mean, everything from the hiring and evaluation of coaches to the schooling of coaches into the current state of the thinking of the practice within the organization, assuming that they had a broad set of knowledge, all the way to the conscious tailoring of the tools to support that method and to support that behavior, et cetera, the knowledge bases, the elaborating knowledge bases, the access to those, the leadership behaviors, the individual behaviors, et cetera. And that's because, when you're a leader in an organization like that, your job is to go and fight the battle, take the hill, win over the customer, win in the market, and you need somebody else to help you take care of the fact that, there is friction that people need to have out of their way. So that's a very long way to say no, but. So, so I don't think your leader should be the only coach, but I do think they need to be highly educated or highly aware of the principles.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I'm a big believer in the fact that leadership should coach. Whether or not they need partners is a whole different story. And I thank you for that answer, which actually leads me to another question I've just come up with. So any questions, guys? Rapid fire, because we're reflecting and closing down now. What
one
roles...
that's just come in.
Oh, I got one.
Just one that's come in. It says, it seems your background is financial services. How would you think they might transfer to the manufacturing sector? The circle.
Yeah. A large part of my background is financial services, but I prefer to believe that my background is effective people and effective teams doing hard tasks together. So all of these techniques will definitely transfer. In fact, this morning I was talking to an amazing team in an entirely different sector who have exactly the same aspiration for this greatness of their teams and their organization. And for me, it was gratifying to know that, being people and being leaders, our accountability is the same.
Question from Edwin. We've already got them, Edwin. Self-driving cars. When are we getting them? We've got them.
Yes,
we've got them
already.
In fact, he's not really a friend of mine, but I like to think he's a friend of mine. He's a local dentist. Hadley. He's a counsellor here in Wanganui. He has a self-driving car. I know he is self-driving that car because I see him not driving it, even though it's illegal. Just saying. Question from Sim. We have, what roles and people types do you need on the ground at the beginning of a transformation? So you've made the choice. Well, here we go. What are we going to do? You call Serge.coach. No, sorry.
Well, at the beginning, you need leaders who know what this is that they want to achieve, and who have the humility to understand what they don't know and to learn that, and most importantly, to create the opportunity for others in their team to learn that, because the ones that pick up that torch are most often unexpected. I reflect on our journey with our team in Westpac, where some of the most ardent drivers of our change were the most disaffected and the most disconnected beforehand, and in some cases would afterwards say that the change that they had experienced and gone through and driven has changed their lives fundamentally. So the answer to that is it's hard to tell upfront who your change champions are going to be. But it does often come from disaffected folks who have been frustrated for years by not being able to change stuff. Now, on that particular note, it's an interesting topic, the concept of firebrand change champions, and it's something that's actually weighed on me over the years, because I've seen this many times. Is there are folks who get enthused and set alight with the religious fire of this new thing that we're doing, and they will go out there and they will set the world alight for you, and it's amazing. And as a leader, your responsibility is also to protect their energy. because over time what happens is that they go out with great fervor and they box up against the old wall time and time again, and they'll keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting until they don't. And that's when their flame goes out, and then they become massively disillusioned, deeply disheartened. And actually, as leaders, our job is to make sure that we don't set people on fire. We set them a smolder, so that they can burn long and slow and gentle, because that's how you make really enduring coals. Is you get them in there, you keep them warm, you keep them enthused slowly, not out there being evangelical about it.
I love it. I love it. Any other questions as we come to a close?
Yeah, I think you just reminded me of something you told me, Dawie, back in the day. It was a comment about revolutions. You said that revolutions don't happen because people are upset or find the current situation difficult. Status quo. They don't like status quo. They start revolutions when they experience something radically better and then are forced to go back to status quo.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's 100% right. Is revolution doesn't come from discomfort. It comes from outrage.
Yes.
Yes.
But I love that point about slow burn and perhaps connecting them up where you can. Monitoring very carefully the impact that they're having on the people around them.
Absolutely. And helping them understand when that impact isn't what they perhaps would have wanted it to be. But when I look back over the years, I made the comment earlier that this kind of journey is a one-way valve. You can't turn your organization back when you've started, not with the same people that are in it anyway. And it's because of that outrage factor. Is that if you back away from this better world that people have started tasting, they will make choices that'll take them to that world, whether that's in your organization or not.
Love it. Kia ora. Hey, Carrie says you are bloody inspiring.
Carrie, love
don't know why I'm putting an Australian accent on there, but whenever I see the word bloody, I'll assume it's an Australian accent.
No, Carrie is Kiwi all day long. One of my favorite peeps. It's so nice to hear from you, Carrie.
Yeah.
Sorry, Carrie. That's kind of for those overseas, that's kind of an insult to say you're Australian. Rose says, love that outrage. Sim says, thanks, great for the answer. What's your next gig?
That is such a common question, and everybody thinks I've got this secret thing that's about to happen. And actually, that secret thing is not much more than me taking my time to figure out what it is that I want to do now. I have dissatisfactions with the state of the world, just like everybody. And I must say, I'm in the middle of a master's at the TFL, or in the early stages, and I'm being exposed to diversity of thought that I could not have imagined. I've been in the corporate world a long time, and I've experienced the concept of diversity in our sense, but for the first time, I'm being immersed in ways of thinking, passions and fires that I've never ever seen in my whole life, and to me, it's probably one of the most rewarding experiences ever. And knowing that there is a particular set of skills and knowledge that I can add into that fire, for me, takes my mind to places that I couldn't have imagined. So for me right now, it's impossible to tell what the next thing is going to be. The process for me is essentially doing the whole lean canvas on my intent and my life and my purpose and where I want to go with the thing. And also, before any of that, setting the next world on fire, actually, I'm going to take a bit of a break. Focus on my studies, focus on a process of discovery, focus on speaking to as many people as I possibly can. So I'm an aggressive coffee haver. So I have coffee with anybody and everybody, because I just love connecting with folks and just hearing the diversity and the often strange, mostly delightful conversations that we have are very rewarding to me. So that's my immediate intent.
I love that. And apart from a caffeine addiction, Edwin says write a book.
That's something that's been
Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. It's been floated. I have toyed with the idea, and I'll probably keep toying with the idea. What I don't want to do is write a tips and tricks for agile transformations book, because there are others who have done that better than I could ever aspire to do it. We've spoken about many of them tonight already. But certainly I have been giving some thought to what are those things that I can contribute to the body of knowledge, of leadership, of change, of adapting to a much more complicated world.
If you don't mind me saying, Driving Passion from Within, title for you. That I'm seeing that for you 100%. We've got speaking engagement for Melinda. Wink, wink. So
reach out. Let's talk. I'm always happy.
Melinda, so chats.
Yeah.
We have cups of tea all day long. From
Rooibos tea from Carrie.
Is that how you say that? Rooibos.
I think it's spelled wrong there.
Rooibos. It's
Rooibos. I can't roll my arse.
Yeah.
There you go.
A book on the spirit of culture of an organization. Book topic. See, look, Ro knows you. Everyone knows you. This is where we're going. I've got an agent for you. Business Agility Institution will become. Give them a manuscript. Just let you know, Evan's a great guy. Any more rapid fire questions, guys? Let me know. I got 3 rapid fire questions for you. Otherwise,
I got one massive shout out. I know that this couple has been a major influencer for Dawie.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, I just thought we couldn't go for too long without mentioning the Bells.
Yes.
Did you want to have a quick word about?
Yes, absolutely.
Stephen and Karen.
Stephen and Karen Bell have been my muses and my guardrails for a long time, ever since Standard Bank. So we're going on 10 years now, and they're some of the seminal thought thinkers in the lean world, and transition from that lean thinking into the agile world. And probably the most important thing that they've done for me over the years is to keep me a smolder and not a fire, and to keep me honest to the intent and the purpose. And in fact, I was chatting online with them earlier today, and they were sad not to be able to join, but it's 2:00 in the morning for them, so they'll be on watching the recording. So shout out to you guys, and thank you. I'm eternally grateful to your contribution to my career so far.
I love it. Anything from you, Kola, or the crowd online? Because I got 3 rapid fire
always a
questions
pleasure hanging out with Dawie, and so yeah, looking forward to our paths crossing again soon. Glad to see you getting stuck into the Tech Futures Lab master's degree, and very intrigued about your experience there and the kind of things that are blowing your mind. Because if they're blowing your mind, then I would love to know more. So it sounds like we're about due for a coffee.
100%.
Maybe we do a lean coffee for the Westpac alumni. Hey,
100%. As long as it's not a decaf.
Yeah.
Michael, you've got some rapid fires. Go. Rapid fire.
I have. You ready?
Let's wrap this up.
Short answers. What is good about transformation?
Subjective. Good is what you want to achieve.
Awesome. What is ugly?
Is not respecting the spirit and the mana and the contribution of those that you're doing it with.
Love it. What is bad?
Yeah. Bad is when you compromise on that vision.
I love it. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to sign off for tonight. Kia ora koutou, everybody. This has been an amazing session with Dawie Olivier. Watch out, guys. Your mics are still on.
That's ugly, mate.
That is making my ears hurt. Say it again. Mike, let's just coach you again. Dawie Olivier. Done.
Okay.
Right.
That's the thought that counts.
Right. Kia ora koutou, everyone. It's been a great session with Dawie Olivier. I've been awoken in the fact that not only is it just about driving force and change, but also the fact that people are the most important part of that. You can see that Dawie reiterated again and again and again. Don't upset the people, empower the people, lead the people, coach the people. Don't disrespect the people. The whole way through this, I've had reflections and making notes about that, and I love that entirely. I hope you did too. Remember to subscribe, remember to like, remember to comment, remember to add us on LinkedIn. And Dawie, how can people contact you?
Reach out on LinkedIn is the easiest way. I'm a prolific LinkedIner, so get in touch, connect, let's chat.
Awesome, love it. Everyone have a good night. We'll see you next week, next Friday, 8 p.m. New Zealand time, every single week. Agility Matters, where we look at adaptive organizations responding to customer change, and we do it flexibly because there's not one way.